Hello? Yeah, I'll tell him. Hey sinners, it's your fucking prophet speaking. God says that we actually came from her vagina, not Adam's rib. God wants us to address her as that bitch now in all prayers and legal documents. Did you know that John has a twink on the side? Olivia doesn't even know. Oh my god, I heard that they're swingers. She practically propositioned me in the church parking lot. Having gained an angel? More like
Hey babes, welcome back to Pouty Mouth. I'm your prophet and host, Tara, and I'm so happy you're here as always. Today's episode is going to be a fun one. We're going to be pouting about the plan of happiness, or rather, our plan of happiness. If you're not familiar with the Mormon plan of happiness, it's really a step-by-step list of things that you have to do to be able to make it to the highest degree of heaven, the celestial kingdom in Mormonism. So that's getting baptized, marrying somebody in the temple for women, somebody who has the priesthood, having children, and of course, enduring to the end. These are the basics or the missionary lesson version of the Mormon plan of happiness so that you can go to the celestial kingdom. We were all taught this all the time growing up, constantly. And now I wanted to get into our plan of happiness and really your plan of happiness, because I want to talk about your dreams, I want to talk about building your life now that's so yours that your past self wouldn't even believe it. I know that there's a lot of people who are still grieving what you've lost because of following the Mormon plan of happiness. And so, of course, I want to be able to give you ideas of what your life could actually look like. And if you're already in your post-religious glow up, then I can't wait to share some of those submissions so that, again, can give people an idea of what that looks like. But either way, this episode is going to be for all of us so that we can really have the permission I really want this episode to be your permission slip to dream so fucking big for your life. So let's get comfy, get cozy, because we're going to be talking about creating a life that's even better than what Mormon heaven promised. First, we have to get into the promises of Mormon heaven, because honestly, if we're being real, they're not even that great, especially if you're a woman. If you're a man, you get promised that you can build worlds without end, and as man is, God once was, as God is, man can become. That is something that not only did I teach on my mission, I was taught all growing up. Now it's debated whether you'll be able to create your own worlds in Mormon heaven, which doesn't really make sense, because that was the whole point of the temple video, and going to the temple all the time and doing all of this was like, look, like, here's the creation, and like, you'll be able to be a part of this creation of your own worlds. For women, Mormon heaven is absolutely fucking not worth it. Basically, you'll just be one of many lives. And as we know, Dallin H. Oaks just talked about heavenly mothers. So if you wanted an apostle of God, I'm saying that with quotation marks, to back that up, it was literally a couple weeks ago that he talked about mothers in heaven. And that's why in Mormonism, they never wanted to talk about heavenly mother, because it's always been said that there is multiple mothers. So for women, you get to be multiple mothers and you get to just create babies for eternity. Sounds pretty miserable if you ask me. I think as a kid, I didn't realize how miserable that would be until I became a mother. And I love my children. I have not loved the responsibility of motherhood. Just this last week, there were so many kids in and out of my house all day long. And it's so funny because they'll be like, Miss Tara, can we do this? Miss Tara, can you do that? And I feel like I find myself looking around like, you're talking to me? Oh yeah, like, show no fear, act like you're in charge, or else these kids will smell the fear and there will be a mutiny in this house. But I still can't believe sometimes that, like, I'm really fucking 30 years old and I really have 2 children and I really am in charge of telling them what to do and their livelihood and figuring out how they can live their best lives. It's mind-boggling to me still to this day that I am a mother, because I literally feel like I'm just like a little 16-year-old girly still trying to figure it out. If you were looking for a inspiring story of motherhood, you will not find it here or from me, because I'm still terrified of it. And I've been doing it now for 8 years, which is, again, wild to me that I have an 8-year-old and I still have not figured it out. So I can only imagine what my Mormon heavenly life would have been like with kids just running around like crazy, and probably would have created a lot of Lucifers. So thank God I'm not going to the celestial kingdom. Anyways, back to that plan of happiness. For a lot of us women, it meant that, we're going to grow up, we're going to get married as quickly as possible and start having kids as quickly as possible. And people's timelines on this are definitely different. And there are some women who go to college and others who don't. But even if they do end up going to college, most likely they won't be using their college degree very much, if any at all. Yes, in the beginning of their marriage, they might use it to help pay for their husband to go to college. This was definitely a lot more similar before my generation of women also serving missions, because what would happen is Mormon men would go on missions while Mormon women would go to college, and then they would get home. The Mormon woman would work because she'd be out of college sooner to help pay for the Mormon man's college. And then once he was finished, or even before he was finished, you might become a stay-at-home mom and drop out of college. Either way, the goal with everything, whether you're going to college or whether you don't go to college, is to be a mother. And so because that is the ultimate goal, to be a mother, and obviously with that you have to be a wife first, you cannot be a single mother. That is diabolical in Mormonism. But you have to be a wife and mother. And so that is at the forefront of everything that you do. And we're taught this at such a young age that it really clouds everything else. At least for me, it clouded everything. Even jobs that I would think of as I was growing up would be like, oh, but would I be able to do a mother? Even plans of things that I wanted to do would be like, oh, how would I be able to be a mother with doing that? And of course, you would also be discouraged a lot of times by people, because if you had these dreams, they would also be asking, how would you be a mother? Especially in my generation of women, maybe it wasn't as explicitly said as previous generations that like your ultimate goal should be a mother, but it was definitely implied, right? There was lots of things that women just weren't allowed to do within Mormonism. But you couldn't serve in the temple if you had young kids at home. You could not be a seminary teacher, which is a teacher at high school that teaches kids about Mormonism all through high school. You could not do that if you were married and a mother. You couldn't be an MTC teacher, which is the mission training center. You could not do that. So it was definitely implied. And even with the church jobs through Mormonism, again, most of the time women were secretaries at these jobs. And this is for profit, right? The part of the church. Women, again, were not holding full-time jobs or were passed over for promotions because, again, they were women. They should be at home with their children. Even women who would go to BYU, who are paying for their fucking education, would be told, if they were in jobs that were like accounting or that were engineering, would be told that they're taking these jobs from men who would need to be providers. So again, I love how I just said that it wasn't as explicit, but that's pretty explicit. So a lot of us just didn't really dream. When I'm thinking about myself, I would constantly have dreams of like wanting to travel the world or wanting to go to college in New York. And not necessarily thinking about like what career I would want, but I remember my first time as a kid in New York City and seeing all these different people, which was so amazing for me having grown up in Utah to walk the streets of, Times Square and just see all of the possibilities. That was the first time I thought, I want to live here. I want to come here so bad. But then the back of my head, I'd say, but why would I need to come here if I'm just going to be a wife and mother? Like, I would have no reason to pay all this money to move out here, go to college, when it's like, I should just be a wife and mother. Another thought, I always thought, oh, I want to travel the world. I would love to travel the world. And I don't know how that's going to happen, but I would just love to be able to see the world. And I think part of that was, again, just because of growing up in Utah, feeling like the world was so much bigger than the little bubble that I was raised in and wanting to experience that. But then again, the thought coming back to my head of how would someone who's supposed to be a wife and mother, how would they travel the world? And it really did dictate a lot of my decisions of like, that's the reason why I served a mission, is because I felt like if I didn't serve a mission, I would not be able to find my soulmate, in quotations, but even not just like my soulmate, but like a righteous man, right? Because now everyone was serving missions. And in a way, that kind of ended up being true because it was my mission companion who introduced me to my husband. But I'm sure there are so many other people out there that would have been a great match for me. Love my husband, but like I really don't believe in this term of soulmates. And a lot of times in the church, like they will act like they don't believe in this term of soulmates, but then also kind of contradicting because it's like, oh, you need to be in the right place, the right time to meet the right person. And so I don't know, it goes back and forth, but I remember very strongly feeling like, oh, I need to like find my person. So we all, held to this iron rod, which is a term from the Book of Mormon story of Lehi and holding to the rod to get to the tree of life. We all felt like this is what we had to do in order to be happy. The plan of happiness, right? They call it the plan of salvation, the plan of happiness. On my mission, especially, they kept always telling us to say the plan of happiness. Stop saying the plan of salvation. Say the plan of happiness constantly. And so I still think that's a very big thing, is to say the plan of happiness. And you miss out on so much of your life when you're living it for someone else. And truly, whether that's for God or for the church that you're so involved in, like, I think there's so much codependency when it comes to high demand religions like Mormonism that it really is such a mind fuck to try and figure out what it is that you want to do versus what it is that the church and the Mormon leaders are telling you that you want to do. Anyways, it's so interesting now thinking about this plan of happiness and really thinking about how much it kind of messed me up, especially when thinking about just this idea that if you follow all of these steps that you are going to be happy, which is just not reality. And then also acting like life is not complicated, right? A lot of times in comment sections or from active Mormons just in general or in church itself, right? I remember people being like it's not complicated. Like if you just do this, this, and this, like your life's going to be so much better. Like I just don't understand like why it's so hard for people. But that is, I feel like, a childlike view in general on life, because life is fucking complicated. Life is fucking messy. So if you're trying to oversimplify it, I feel like that's the first red flag of like something's not right here, because if there's nothing this simple, right? There is nothing so simple in life. The simplest things are the most complicated thing. And if your life is not complicated and messy and all over the place, then you might be a robot and not actually living your life. Or so just in general, I think of hearing and teaching people about this plan of happiness when my own life from following this plan became so unhappy, became suicidal, and just absolutely miserable and ready to blow it all up. I think that's a big gateway for those of us who become ex-Mormon and want to leave Mormonism because we're so fucking miserable. So life is no longer as happy as it's supposed to be. And I remember going to a therapist for the first time, a real therapist. I've talked previously about going to a therapist, but it was through LDS Family Services and it was just not that great of experience. But this time I went to a real therapist and I had never been so sad, just constantly crying every day, and not just the type of cries where you're just like, things bring you to tears, but like full on just like wailing for hours. And just, I remember the feeling in my chest of those wails and that feeling of just not wanting to live anymore. And it's so interesting now to not have that feeling, but being able to think about that feeling. Anyways, I remember just talking about how unhappy I was and being like, I've done everything I'm supposed to do. And him being kind of like taken back by that. Like, what do you mean you've done everything you're supposed to do? And it's like explaining this plan of happiness and him being like, well, honestly, nobody's 100% happy all of the time. And what's going to put you in better health is being able to ride the emotions throughout the day, because our emotions are up and down all day long. And this is when I started just like paying attention to my emotions throughout the day, because that real health and real healthy mental health is being able to move through these different emotions throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the year, right? We are up and down and all around, and we are able to navigate those things. But it's like all of a sudden I could not navigate any other emotion besides happiness. So I didn't know how to get out of this depression, how to get out of this intense anxiety, because I'd never been taught. Whole life I've only been taught that like, if you do these things you'll be happy. But what about if you're doing these things and you're still not happy? That can be totally normal. And this, not to like throw a bone to the Mormon church, but just simply switching the language around that, I feel like would change people's lives, because the reality is like, you're just not going to be happy all the time. And doing all of those things doesn't necessarily mean that like the Mormon church is wrong for you if you're not feeling happy, I guess. But I think for me, it was like, this is causing my unhappiness. It's not just that I'm not feeling happy, but doing these things is making me exponentially more unhappy and more miserable with my life. But I think it's a lot to be able to pull ourselves out of this place. At least for me, it was a lot, because it's an intense grieving. And it's also like, a lot of times you're looking at your life when you are leaving Mormonism, and it's kind of in shambles. At least that's how my life was. Like, I was doing literally everything in my life that I kind of never wanted to do, like being a stay-at-home mom or living in Pocatello, Idaho. And I know that sounds so silly to a lot of people, about like, what, you just like didn't want to live in a place, but like Idaho was quite literally the one place in the world that I was like, I never want to live there. And if you have ever been married to a Mormon man, or maybe this is just me, there was constant talk when I got married of like, oh yeah, you'll just follow Aaron wherever he has a job. Like, you don't really get a say in this. It's like constantly reiterated and not even talked about. Or like, once you have kids, like, of course you're just going to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, it's just like, yeah, that's what you're going to do. You're going to take care of your kids. There's no say around kind of how your life is going. Like, for me, I even became a hairstylist, which I loved doing hair. But I will say, now that I'm not doing hair, a big motivation for me to become a hairstylist was so that I could be a mom. It felt like, oh, this is like such a good mom job, which I think a lot of women in Mormonism can relate to, right? This is a good mom job. Like I can pick my hours and I can still have my kids. And it's just like a little fun thing that you could do on the side. But reality is like hairstylists make a lot of money. I made a lot of money. I was able to pay for my husband's school, buy our first house from the money I made. But instead of being able to I technically worked full time, but I was only able to work 3 days a week. So I was cramming, 15 hours into one day so that I could work technically full time, but 3 days a week and then be home with my kids other days of the week, which was a crazy schedule. I hated that schedule, but it was like, this is a good mom job. Like, this is what you're going to do. That's the thing about the Mormon plan of happiness is you never discuss like when this is not working or when things need to pivot, because you're just doing things how you were taught and how you saw, which is, the man is the provider, the wife is the stay-at-home mom who takes care of like all of the household things. And that really like fucked my husband and I up, oh my gosh, so much, to not talk about these things. And it's not until going to therapy and being like, you know what, your life changes and life is so dynamic. Like, even if one thing worked before, like there could be things that make it so it's different now, and that's okay. But with the Mormon plan of happiness, it's like that wasn't okay to make these changes, especially not leaving the church. Oh, dear God, that fucks up a marriage like crazy when one of you decides that you don't want to be Mormon anymore, because this is the plan. You stay Mormon forever. Your kids stay Mormon. And that's how you do it. And it's so funny to look back and be like, that's so fucking ridiculous. Like, life is so much more complex than staying in this one little lane for forever. But I think it also creates this false sense of safety and security to stay in that lane. But I think about after leaving Mormonism and having to pick up the pieces of our lives, that there is such a long grieving process and there's so much to pick up, especially for those of us who have no college education, or maybe you did have a college education, but you never used your degree. It's a lot to go from being a stay-at-home mom to trying to work full time, or just figuring out what you even want to do with your life. When I left Mormonism, I ended up moving to Reston, Virginia, and it was so hard. Like, I almost was more depressed after leaving and trying to put everything back together for how I wanted my life than I was being Mormon and miserable. Like, it's a lot. It's such a big jump. And I feel like, again, therapy, I can't not talk about therapy because of how much it just like helped me to pick up the pieces of my life and move forward. And I remember, like, in Virginia, I got not a little, I don't even want to talk about it like that, because it's so much of this like is what helped me progress through life. I thought I wanted to still do hair, and I was really good at hair. Like, I feel like I'm going to post some pictures of the hair that I used to do so that you all know who your mommy is. No, I want to post pictures of my hair, the hair that I used to do, so that people can really see, like, even the hair that I used to do was so good. Like, I feel like I could have been like, and maybe I'm just hyping myself up, but like, I worked hard. I was trained by Tim Muir, who is a celebrity hairstylist for Yellowstone, for I think is it 1920 some show, who did like hair and makeup for the Spider-Man movies. Like, just an incredible hairstylist. And shout out Tasia McGee, who's also trained by him and still in Utah doing hair. If you are a Black girl or a white girl, because she's a multicultural stylist who needs to get their hair done and wants to look amazing, you will go see Tasia McGee. But anyways, I feel like I was trained by one of the best, and that's why I'm going to post some of the hair that I used to do, because I was a fucking good stylist and I could have been really good. And I started doing this apprenticeship at the salon because I'm like, I'm going to do this like full time when I moved to Virginia. But as I was doing this apprenticeship, I liked it, but I was like, what would I be doing with my life if I wasn't just doing this job that I did because it was a good mom job. Like, did I really choose this job because I wanted to do this? Or did I just choose it because I felt like there was no other option? And what it came down to for me is that I did feel like I chose being a hairstylist, a cosmetologist, because it was my only option. Even though I loved doing hair, even though I felt like it gave me an outlet and made a lot of money, like I was doing it because I felt like this was the only thing that I could do. And so as I was doing it and not particularly enjoying it as much anymore and wanting to be like, I think the hardest thing was like I worked in downtown DC, which was amazing. So that wasn't hard about it. But like I started to see successful Black women. I think that is what changed is uh I was doing the hair of congresswomen, of women who had built their own tech companies, of women who were in just like presidents of huge corporations and like who were also mothers, and some weren't mothers, and some were young and just graduated, and some were talking about like the HBCUs that they went to. And just like having these conversations, it really started to open my mind to like what I actually wanted to do. And I loved doing their hair and I loved having these conversations with them. And I love talking, obviously. I'm a talker. But I started to, talk, and they, would ask me, you were from Utah, and wanting to know, like, I was raised in Mormonism and like this and that. And them being like, I don't know, just like uplifting me in a way. And like, again, seeing these examples of Black women and realizing my own potential really is what pushed me to be like, yeah, I don't think I want to do hair anymore, even though I love this. And it wasn't until last year that I like threw away a lot of my hair stuff because I held on to it so tightly of like, this is the thing that brought me through so many hard times and gave me success and money and a sense of being when I felt like this was like all I had. And now I am letting it go, which was so hard because then starting all over, and especially with no degree, if you were to see the tears that were shed and the hardship that was had to work my way up and to start, I don't know, this path that I was going down of like what I actually wanted to do. And so for me, it started off as, I worked at a plastic surgeon's office. I was the front desk there, even though I felt way overqualified. Not that working at the front desk is bad. I just felt like, hey, I could be doing sales here. Like I could sell this shit easily. I sold people a product that didn't come with anything. When you're a missionary and you can literally sell people a dream, of course I could fucking sell somebody some plastic surgery. Of course. And so I ended up getting promoted there. It was a horrible plastic surgeon's office. I would never recommend it to anyone ever. And just in general, I am grateful for it because it reshaped my view of plastic surgery. And now I go back and forth if I will ever get anything done just from, this experience and being more appreciative of like my body and yada yada. Anyways, after I worked at this plastic surgeon's office, and it was so hard. Like at the time, my youngest that's crazy. He's like 1.5, maybe actually he's 2. My youngest was 2 years old, and putting him in daycare. Don't talk about daycare to Mormon girlies because that stuff is like as close to evil as you can get, right? To put your child in daycare. But it ended up being amazing for me and my husband because both of us saw that kind of these fears, like putting your kids in daycare, that we were taught as Mormons wasn't as real. And I don't know, I think the biggest thing that Mormons have against daycare, right? They'll make you think that like your kids are going to get sexually molested or they're going to get abused or like they're not even going to like know you as their mom. All these different things that I feel like we grew up fearing were kind of demolished. And our husband and I were just like so grateful for external childcare to be able to help and support us. And it also like really opened our eyes just in general to how hard it is to be a parent and a mother. I think external childcare is needed. Like, not everyone has family and support. And I think regardless of if you are working full-time outside the home or working in the home, you need time off, whether you're the full-time stay-at-home parent or the parent who's working outside of the home, or whether you both are. And so it was so nice because it opened up this new world for me. Like, I could take days off of work and my kids could go to daycare and I could go to the spa and actually relax and have a break. Or my husband and I would start doing lunch dates to be able to spend some time together and not always have our kids with us. And we started to value external childcare. Growing up, we were taught that all that labor should be done by the mother or the woman in the house. And so it really helped change our relationship and to get rid of some resentment that I feel like I still held for him. After that, I ended up working for this company called Headway, which you should look it up. I loved working for Headway. That was when it is for you to be able to find therapists that will accept your insurance. And so I started doing sales for them and selling to therapists to be able to use this service so that they could get credentialed with insurance companies so that they could get more customers, more clients to be able to come and see them. And I remember getting that job because I wrote down the criteria after working at this plastic surgeon's office. I had to work on Christmas Eve at this plastic surgeon's office originally, and it was just a horrible, horrible job. But I met some really amazing friends, amazing friends. I'm really still grateful for that part of it. But I wrote down my dream job basically would be a remote job. I'd want to be able to make over $100,000 a year, and I wanted to be able to have unlimited PTO. Those were my and health insurance, really good health insurance still, because at the plastic surgeon's office I did have amazing health insurance, and so I wanted to be able to keep that. And so those were my criteria, and I interviewed probably over 200 jobs. Just kept interviewing all the time to be able to find this job. And I still to this day, I don't know what, there is a part of me that can't even believe that I found this job and was able to make so much money. And I'm not necessarily talking about it to brag, but if I do say myself, I did make a lot of money. And I thought that once I got into corporate America and started to make all of this money, that I would finally feel this sense of fulfillment and success. And it did bring a lot of that. It was so nice to be able to make my own money and be able to feel empowered that way. And it really did open so many doors. But I also just realized that life is what I make it. And what's so awesome about that was that my dream and goal that I was able to achieve. And so when we moved to Kyrgyzstan now, it was hard to let go of that job. It's almost like the hairstylist thing all over again, wanting to hold on to it so tightly because I don't know, sunken cost fallacy, or maybe just feeling this job gave me something rather than that something was always inside of me. And so the reason why I wanted to move to Kyrgyzstan is because I had always dreamed of traveling the world. I wanted to travel the world. I just had never envisioned it. And the longer and I stayed in Mormonism, the more fearful I was to go after the things that I actually wanted in life. And it was even I had to remember what my dreams even were at some points in life. And so going to Kyrgyzstan, literally, I wanted to travel the world, but I was like, where the fuck is Kyrgyzstan? And I don't know if I can do this. It was so scary to do this, but also it was so freeing to be this is what I've always wanted to do. And it was the best decision. And letting go of that job was really hard, but the beauty in finding things that have come afterwards has been amazing. And it's not like I let go of that job for nothing. It's been so interesting now because I'm technically a stay-at-home mom again. but I am starting school in the fall because that's what I wanted to do. Was like, if I do this, then I will be able to go after this next step in fulfilling some life goals that I want to do. And so moving here has been amazing. I know I keep talking about how amazing Kyrgyzstan is, but it's changed my life. And I can honestly say, as someone, I feel like I'm cosplaying a rich person right now. I'm actually still poor. I'm still one of you guys. Not to say that anyone's poor, but technically, on the house that we live in, again, is paid by the government. Lots of things are paid with this job for my husband. But it's so interesting to be like, to see conversations online of people talking about, like, yeah, this person's life isn't hard because they have this, this, and this. And I just want to tell you, it's true. These influencers' lives are not fucking hard, guys. Now that I have a full-time nanny, a house cleaner, and, someone to cook, it is not hard. I'm just going to put it out there. Everything that you have thought and everything that you have said about influencers that have all this money to pay for all this external care and things that help their house is absolutely fucking true. The time that I don't have to spend cleaning, cooking, and even during the day to be able, like, I have a nanny, so my kids even have someone that's watching them. It is insane. I'm telling you, their day has so much more time than your day. I should say my day. I'm not saying just them, but like, I just remember I'm not anyone who's like against influencers, like, especially like Mormon influencers. I kind of am like, you go girl, because they've been able to carve this niche and like be able to get so much success in this little box that it's like almost incredible to me. But their life, of course, is so much better. Like, even like, I talked about Ballerina Farm a little while ago, and her saying that she, that article about like, oh yeah, sometimes I'm even so tired. Like, it even more so makes you be like, shut the fuck up. Like, get a fucking nanny. Like, you could do all this shit and not have to be so tired. I'm so sick of like the cosplaying martyrdom. But that was another thing that, like, going to therapy, again, back to the therapy thing. Go to fucking therapy, because that was another thing that, talking to my therapist, she's like, yeah, it's almost like they have to create this martyrdom in women within Mormonism so that you feel like you have sacrificed so much more. And so you feel like that sunken cost fallacy is even greater. Anyways, I know I've talked endlessly about my life, but I just feel like if you would have told me 5-6 years ago how much more amazing my life would be, and how much success and how many of the things that I've always dreamed of would be coming true, I don't think that I would have believed you. I would not have believed, like, literally, when I was signing up, I'm going to NYU. That's another thing. I was hoping my shirt would be here by time, but this is so funny. I'm only doing a certification through there for a marketing certification because I'm wanting to transition from sales to marketing. And my husband has not heard the end of it, that I'm like, I'm an NYU student. I got my student ID. Yes, I can get into the bookstore and get you a discount. Like, I will be saying that. If people ask me after I'm finished with this certification, it's going to take like a year. But if they ask me, you bet your ass I'm going to tell them that I graduated from NYU. You bet your ass. And I'm still in the process of convincing my husband that I need a trip to New York. Literally, I just want to go to New York with my little student ID and walk around NYU campus and be like, yeah, I'm that girl. But either way, things look so different, right? Like, I never would have thought that I would be traveling the world with my family. I never would have thought that, like, in the end, I would actually end up going to NYU and doing all these things. It looks so different than how I would have envisioned it and how I would have imagined it, but it's still so beautiful nonetheless. And it's taken blood, sweat, and tears to get here. Truly has taken blood, sweat, and tears. And it's been a beautiful thing. And I think of, like, I don't think I talked about this originally. I think I just posted on Instagram that, like, fucking Dubai, because I went to when we first flew here, we flew into Dubai before coming to Bishkek, and it was such a horrible experience. Let me just get into this real quick and then I'll get into the submissions. But it was such a hard experience because Kyrgyzstan is a Muslim country. And so going to Dubai and seeing how they do things, of like the prayer call 4 or 5 times a day, and like them being so rude to us, the Emiratis being so rude to us when we got there. If you're not familiar, there is slavery. It is slavery that it runs on. And so if you're not an Emirati and making, over $100,000 a year, because that their government gives that to born Emiratis because of the oil there, everyone else is slave labor, basically from India and different parts of the world. So originally when we got there, I think people assumed if you're not an Emirati, you're not going to be treated that well. But at first people assumed, like, oh, these are Black people probably from Africa or whatever. But then once they saw that, like, oh, you're American, like, you get treated a little bit better, because then they're like, oh, you're a tourist, you're going to spend money here, so we'll treat you better. But anybody who's not an Emirati gets treated like dirt. But because it's such a big tourist place and they live off of this tourism from Westerners, they, I don't know, put on this false sense of whatever. And I need to talk my shit now about Dubai, because I actually am going back there. By the time this episode comes out, I will be in Dubai again for a week. And it's so interesting because at first when I got there, I thought that that's how Kyrgyzstan was going to be. So I was like, okay, so this is what it's like to live in an authoritarian theocracy. This is what it's like. And I am not liking it so far. I was like, this is what it's going to be like. And I'm so thankful that like freaking Kyrgyzstan is nothing like Dubai. But now, since being in Kyrgyzstan, it's so interesting because now I'm like excited to go back to Dubai because there's things that I need to get there. It's so, again, life is so complicated. And a friend, when I first moved here and I was telling them about this experience, because they had lived in Qatar and other parts of the Middle East, who again are these authoritarian theocracies, I was like, how did you do that? How did you live there? Because my husband's now asking me, like, would you ever want to live in these places? Because yes, technically they're very nice, they're very beautiful, but like that's because if you do anything wrong and against all these million rules, like you will end up dead and with very, very harsh punishment. So I was like, how did you do that? Being a feminist and yada yada. And I feel like her answer has changed my mind in so many ways about so many different things. And not that we shouldn't still speak out against injustice, but she just said that, like, well, I have not grown up in this culture. I am a visitor seeing these things and observing, and like it's not my right to go in there and tell these people how they should be living their life when I have no real understanding of it. And that literally flipped a switch in my mind of like, I'm still going to speak, I can still speak on these things, but it doesn't mean I have any right to go to Dubai and tell them how they should be living their life, especially like if you see like a lot of people enjoy it. And there's something to be said that it's literally the safest, so safe, so safe to be there. But it is hard. It's hard to think about, like, even as I'm packing, I'm like, oh, you do have to wear certain outfits. Even though you're a tourist, like, you're not going to get, like, arrested or anything or in trouble, but you will be, like, frowned upon. And there's some stores that you're not going to be able to be let into if you're dressed immodestly and stuff. And so it'll be interesting this week to go back. I'll report back because it is nice, right? Like the hotels are so cheap. Like I'll check out my Instagram this week because I'll post the hotels of how fucking nice they are and how nice everything is there. It's so cheap. But again, it's because it's off of slave labor. That's why it's so cheap. And that is a hard fucking pill to swallow. Well, thank you for listening to my rant. And now let's get into some oral traditions because I do want to hear about your guys' life experiences now after leaving Mormonism. And thank you so much for sharing. Again, if I don't get through all of these in the time that we have, please join the Pouty Girls Discord because I will post the rest of the submissions. And thank you again for submitting. So let's get into it. This first submission says, honestly, I'm not happier after leaving Mormonism. Mormonism uses happiness as a sign that the church is true. It likes to tell you that because a doctrine might make you happy, that it means it's true. I think because of this, we are sometimes scared to admit that we are not 100% happy post-Mormonism. But happiness is not evidence of truth. I used to believe that I had a life purpose and that God had a plan for me. My patriarchal blessing told me I would preach the gospel in the nations of the world, and that I'd be a teacher and leader among my peers. It might sound prideful, but this made me feel valuable. Now I have no purpose, and it's honestly depressing. I used to believe that I would continue to live with friends and family after death. I now believe that death is the end. That is terrifying and depressing. Would I be happier if I was still Mormon and still believe? Maybe, but I choose to follow what I believed was true. It's okay to not be completely happy. That's such a good point. Like, happiness is not even necessarily the goal. And again, yeah, like happiness is not evidence of any truth. It is just a feeling. And we go through our feelings all throughout the day, the week, the year, like I said before. And that's kind of where I've landed as well, is like, I don't necessarily need to be happier after leaving Mormonism. I think what I've gained after leaving Mormonism is just a better understanding of myself, the world, and others. And that's been enough. I've had to reshape what that purpose or that plan really is. Instead of having your purpose assigned, you now get to decide your own. You get to determine what is meaningful in your life. If that means doing charity work or sitting on the floor playing Legos all day, it's your call. You create your own value. You are free to create your own happiness. I've noticed that very little in my life has changed. I no longer have to go to endless meetings on Sunday, and I no longer give 10% of my income to an organization that I don't support. I still worry about the same things and get frustrated by the same things. The difference is that I don't have this wild belief that some magical power will deliver me from all my troubles if I'm just good enough or something. It takes some time to wrap your head around your new purpose. However, you'll be much better off in the long run. This is another plug to subscribe to the newsletter, because I'm going to share a couple TikToks on this that I felt like were so helpful. And one of them that this specific submission reminded me of is a TikTok where she mentions how Christianity is just something to placate our fear. Yeah, she even goes on to, which was very strong words, to say that Christianity is for the weak, because the reality of life is so much harder without religion. And I guess she didn't say Christianity, she said religion is for the weak. And I agree with that. I think that religiosity does help us placate a lot of these hard feelings. And I think that we accept that because life is hard, and it's okay to, have your things that help. But it's so interesting because it's similar to like how religious people or how Mormons view marijuana, of like as this pacifier for life. But I would say that like that is their religion is also a pacifier for life. It's all of these things that like we use to help us get through. I was initially sad about the external prospects of knowing if there's an afterlife and being able to go there, but now I'm an agnostic atheist. I don't know if there's an afterlife, and I kind of doubt it, but I'm not going to dwell on it. Nothing really changes except I now have more freedom to live the life I prefer than being a slave to the machine. Now I get to enjoy every day of my life how I want to enjoy it, instead of worrying about the next lesson I have to teach on Sunday. I'll go do whatever I want. No more weekends consumed by church. I can now do whatever I want over the weekend, like going camping, hiking, watching a late movie Saturday night, sleep in and make a fancy breakfast, visit friends, etc. I personally am living a more happy and fulfilling life after leaving Mormonism. However, it took a couple of years to reach that point. It was a mental shift away from the religious programming done on me. Mormonism just seems like a silly mythical drama I got sucked into, but I am not out of it. It's like getting out of an MLM where you are promised this fantasy world that simply doesn't exist. I'm perfectly fine with my 100K day job instead of thinking I'm going to live out this millionaire fantasy as a sales guy. I'm an existentialist crisis. I've noticed waves of dissatisfaction come into my life on account of the hedonistic treadmill. This can be confused for unhappiness that wasn't so visceral under Mormonism. The dream job that I wanted for a decade happened, and after about 3 months, it was just a job. Mormonism, on the other hand, is an unwinnable game, so you never really hit peak bliss. The box is never really checked. Well, if you're on the inside of the fishbowl, the answer to everything is endure to the end. That's a pretty good trap, psychologically speaking, because you never achieve the greatest thing ever. So you never have to have the you never have to have the existential realization that the greatest thing ever is fleeting. That's true. Like, you, not until you die are you really going to know if you like did everything right or not. So you're always going to be grasping for that in this life when it comes to Mormonism, which is really, really sad and interesting. But I can totally see where this person is coming from, of like, yeah, you have to face the existentialism and get into that if you want to be able to work through all of that. And I feel like that hedonistic treadmill, we all can kind of get into after leaving Mormonism. And I think hedonism, like in general, Mormons prescribe that to anything that is not Mormonism. Anything that is self-serving or self-pleasing is considered hedonistic to Mormons, which I've gotten so many comments on, like, you're just a heathen, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, like, sure, I don't really care. This is the last one I'll share, and then the rest you can check out on the Pouty Girls Discord. This one says, I'm turning 50 this year, and that has given me time to focus and fix and address a few of my own issues. So what did I do? Lost 20 pounds so I could feel better, be more active, and be healthy. I got active again and went back to dancing ballet along with lots more exercise. My better health and fitness was important to my partner because she wants to be active and do a lot in our retirement. I found a good therapist and started dealing with my shit so I could be a better friend, put more effort towards the things my partner needed from me, and started prioritizing some fun as well. That is such a good list. Like, if anything, I think this is a great one to end on, because I think it's okay to start prioritizing the things that you want in life regardless of your age. Like, I love that she talked about going back to dancing to do ballet. 50 is not old, y'all, and we're not old. Like, even sometimes when I think like I'm 30, I'm so old. Like, this past month I've started jujitsu, which is something that originally I just did because I wanted to know how to defend myself and wanted to get some exercise in, different type of exercise, and something that was available here in Kyrgyzstan, and I'm so happy I did. It's such a wild thing, but like, I'm shocked at how much I enjoy it and how much I like it. And so get into boxing, get into ballet, get into whatever it is that you want to get into, because I feel like, at least if you are in this depression of like, there's not going to be a next life and life is really hard right now, start doing some of those things that you used to enjoy, or trying new things that you might not know you enjoy, because it does make things a lot better, and it is your plan. Like, nobody can tell you, even me, I cannot tell you what is going to make your life worth living. No one. And so whether it is like you want to be Christian and find a new church, do that. Go find a new church. Whether it's like you don't want to join any religion, but you are wanting community, go find your community. Figure out what it is that you want out of life and do it. Because no old guys in Salt Lake City are going to be able to tell you what's best. Even if you find a great church and there's a great pastor, like, they cannot tell you what's going to be best for your life. Only you know that. And it starts by not being afraid to try new things. And I'm so happy that we're all on this journey of trying new things. And I am so grateful that you're here. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at Pouty Mouth Podcast. On TikTok, it's at Tara M. Herbert. You can also join the Pouty Girls Discord. I'll put a link in the Instagram. It's also in my link tree. Please share and leave a review. That will be so helpful. Please share the podcast, share an episode that you like, and share with me ways that you think it could be better. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'm excited to hear all of the things that you're doing with life after Mormonism. And I will post another submission box that you guys can write all of your submissions in for next week's episode. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.
Hello? Yeah, I'll tell him. Hey sinners, it's your fucking prophet speaking. God says that we actually came from her vagina, not Adam's rib. God wants us to address her as that bitch now. in all prayers and legal documents. Did you know that John has a twink on the side? Olivia doesn't even know. Oh my god, I heard that they're swingers. She practically propositioned me in the church parking lot. Having gained an angel, more like hell gained a bitch.